Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. A lot going on in the Kohlberger case, and if you guys were with us last night, we had Dr. Joni Johnston on, a forensic psychologist. She's fantastic. But we covered that. But while we were covering that, other things, the city never sleeps, as they say, right? Other things were happening in the Kohlberger case, and specifically the Judge Stephen Hippler, getting all sort of mad, well, I could use the word pissed off, about the leaks in this case. And the main leak, of course, was from Dateline NBC. And that came out. And we question, where did these leaks come from? Is there someone who's going to benefit by these leaks in some way? So the judge wants to appoint a special prosecutor for future leaks that could potentially happen when the case is going to trial. So that in itself is also extremely, extremely interesting. The other thing is that the defense is claiming, again, and I'll put the thumbnail up on the screen, an alternate suspect. At this late stage of this quadruple murder, for the defense to raise an alternate suspect, I find it ridiculous. I really do. And I don't know at what level will the district attorney's office, Bill Thompson, and his investigators have to dig into this. And these will be some of the questions that Judge Hippler will be asking the defense, potentially in an additional hearing before this case goes to trial. So we got a lot to talk about today. You're going to be thoroughly entertained. So hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone, the police off the cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline. The game starts here. Joining me today is my co-host, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good to see you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
It feels like we just finished last night's show, and here we are digging into it again,
Yeah.
So, Mike, a lot of these things, and let's start out with the leak. And the fact that Judge Hippler is extremely pissed off about these leaks, which enabled Dateline NBC to do that sort of amazing show that gave a lot of information that no one had up until that point. But I think in Judge Hippler's eyes, that will hurt the case rather than help the case. And he does not want any future leaks. And if there is, he's prepared to appoint a special prosecutor to prosecute whoever produced these leaks to the media in this case. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, the original gag order was put on way, way, way back in probably early January 2023. And it was there because the judge didn't, at that point, I don't know if it was Judge John Judge yet from Latah County, but the first judge that had this case, they wanted a gag order so that it would not get too much information out there, all the little terrible, horrific, bloody secrets about what happened. They didn't want it taint a jury pool. The whole idea is to get 12 people who can have at least a reasonable expectation of looking at this case objectively and rendering a just verdict. And therefore, that was why the gag order was put in place in the first instance. It's been very respected, and we really haven't had any leaks whatsoever until Ann Taylor started challenging the evidence this past, like starting in February and March. And so stuff had to come out, and that's okay. But that gag order is still in place. Judge Hippler is not a man to be trifled with. He's a judge. Judges are gods in their courtroom. When they issue an order, they expect it to be followed by everyone under who's affected by that order. Now, therefore, he's sitting there and he wants now to find out what the source is. Law enforcement source, maybe, perhaps. Is it from someone from the DA's office, or is it somebody from the defense team? But he wants to find out, because this shows contempt for his order and a previous judge's order. And so he's very serious about this. He does not want, at this late stage, for any allegations of any jury pool to be tainted. He wants his case to go off on time on August 11th.
You know, I think that it will be very difficult to find jurors for this case that know nothing about the case. I mean, you'd have to be living in a bubble not to know something about this case. This is a national, an international story. However, to make this case as fair as possible, Judge John Judge, the original judge on this case from Latah County, granted a change of venue. And that's why this case is being tried in Boise, Idaho now. So yes, you can see how serious Judge Stephen Hippler, the presiding judge right now, takes this. And if I had to guess where this leak came from, I would think it's more probable that it came from the prosecution side rather than the defense side, because the defense really can create things like they are in this case by the alternate suspect theory. So that's not a leak, that's something they're bringing up. But a leak is sort of, I think it's more likely that it came from the prosecution, because the leak is sort of showing the prosecution's hand and how much evidence they actually have. And if that was 1/10 or 1/100th or 1/50th of the evidence, imagine how much evidence they actually have. So yes, this judge is quite annoyed by it. I want to play News Nation of Brian Enton and Ashley Banfield here.
Today, and he's with me now live. Brian, I shudder. I absolutely shudder at the thought that journalism may be a reason that evidence that is so compelling could be pulled from a trial. Was there any discussion about that today?
No, and it's hard to imagine that they would just pull the evidence. I think it's going to make jury selection harder, because you've got a lot of people who saw the Dateline episode or have now seen all that evidence that wasn't supposed to be made public. But you made a good point. I mean, Judge Hippler was angry. It was obvious when I was inside the courtroom. He talked about the possibility of a special prosecutor. That is someone to come in and investigate and possibly prosecute and charge someone who's responsible for the leaks. But he didn't bring up Dateline in the courtroom. He didn't say the words Dateline. What happened is, after court, suddenly there was a new filing that popped up almost immediately, and it was from the judge. And that's where he addressed the Dateline issue and said, this Dateline episode aired, there was a big leak. And then he started to name all the different agencies and all of the evidence, and how he wanted all of that to be preserved. Text messages between police officers, phone calls, so that they can get to the bottom of where the leak came from.
Yeah, for me, again, this is another reason that gag orders are not a good idea. I get why. I just think that they're really fast and loose with gag orders nowadays. I feel like I heard something about Judge Hippler adding 2 more alternate jurors, like worried that, it's going to get so bad that they're going to have to boot jurors left and right.
Yeah, and he seemed to blame that on Dateline in court. Again, he didn't say Dateline, but he said something like, because of what happened last Friday, I think we need to add 2 more alternate jurors. So he is clearly peeved about this Dateline episode. They've been so careful with this gag order and all of these secret hearings. The fact that all of this got out, I mean, a lot of information and visuals, he seems like he wants to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, let's talk about the alternate suspect theory. I have been fascinated by the defense and the suggestion that somebody else must have committed these killings.
I want to stop there, Mike, because I
Yes.
want to go to, the leak and the Dateline NBC show. So many people on the prosecutorial side are privy to evidence and to information that is so valuable to the media and to the public. But, are they going to really investigate every one of these law enforcement officers, text messages, prosecutor investigators, text messages, emails? Who's the leak? And does that help the prosecution or does it hurt the prosecution if in fact they find the person that leaked this information?
Yeah, Bill, as you and I have experienced in the NYPD, this is like an internal affairs investigation. Having someone from the DA's office appointed by the judge to investigate, all of the detectives and everyone involved in this case, law enforcement, coroner's people, detectives, uniformed police officers, that never really works out so well. You and I have seen this many times in the NYPD. You're always afraid somebody is going to be scapegoated or that they'll just come up with an inconclusion. Remember about 2 years ago, they had the leak for the U.S. Supreme Court, and they still don't know who leaked a secret draft decision in a case. These things happen. It's unfortunate. It's really bad because at this point, it's especially bad at this point because we're so close to trial. And I just will say that Ashley Banfield was incorrect in her assumptions. No evidence will be unable to be introduced because of jury tainting or possible jury tainting or misconduct. Evidence is evidence, so long as it's reliable and hasn't been tainted by the prosecutor themselves in destroying any evidence. It's going to be introduced. But this is really serious, and someone may hang for this. You never know. But Judge Hippler wants somebody probably criminally prosecuted for criminal contempt because he is not having any misconduct at this point. We're way too close now to the trial.
Like this was a huge problem on the NYPD, and
Sure.
many times in big media cases,
Mhm.
the detectives would call their sources in the media and give them information,
Yeah.
and the media, of course, would say a confidential source that requests anonymity, and that was a detective. But a lot of times, it's the big bosses on the NYPD that feed the information. And maybe they get so pissed off at the detectives because the detectives are taking away their thunder by calling directly to the media when the big boss, and I mean the PC or a chief, wants to call the media, But yes, it is damaging to a case. But yet, the media, as I've said a million times on this show, the media can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And in this case, according to Judge Hippler, they are not a friend of the court because he does not want any of this information leaked because it is tainting the jury pool.
Yeah, it's going to make it very difficult because you're never going to get 12 people who've never heard of this case, but you want 12 people and some alternates to at least be able to give Brian Kohlberger a chance, a shot to listen to his side of the story, listen to both sides of the story, go into the trial without any presumptions in their mind made up at all. You want to have open-minded people. And the more information that comes out, the less people, we've seen it here in the chat, we've seen it here on social media. The more that comes out, the more people are convinced that he is guilty and less people are willing to listen to what Ann Thompson has to say. And I know Ashley Banfield does not like gag orders, but I think gag orders, especially in this case, are very appropriate. And I'm sad to see that the gag order has been violated, because you need to have a jury that at least gives the defense an opportunity with an open mind to present their side of the case.
100%. Let's hear from NBC News in regards to this topic.
Decide whether the alleged alternate perpetrator theory can be brought into the trial.
Provide me with whatever actual evidence you have that supports those allegations, rather than just allegations.
The judge also telling the court that the trial will be live streamed, but agreeing that when the victim's surviving roommates testify, they will not appear on camera.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
Kohlberger has maintained his innocence, but the judge already ruling to allow evidence into the trial that may complicate his defense. That evidence, including data from Kohlberger's Amazon account that shows he purchased a K-bar knife and leather sheath, like the sheath found at the murder scene, which investigators say had DNA that matches Kohlberger's. The judge also allowing a witness description of an intruder with bushy eyebrows to come into play in the trial. NBC's Dateline exclusively obtaining surveillance video of a car circling the block where the murders occurred in Idaho in 2022, saying prosecutors will argue the driver was Brian Kohlberger. At the time, Kohlberger was a graduate student in criminology at nearby Washington State University. Dateline also reporting that data from his phone obtained by law enforcement includes searches about serial killer Ted Bundy and for pornography with the words forced, passed out, drugged, and sleeping. Now, the trial set to begin in August, and Kohlberger facing the possibility of the death penalty if convicted.
Camila Bernal joins us now. Camila, you had a lot of new updates there for our viewers, and I know you have one more, the details on how the jury will be selected.
Yeah, Tom. So jury selection begins on July 30th, and the judge saying he wants to seat 20 people. That's the 12 jurors and 8 alternates during the trial. The judge saying people can go. It's going to be on a first come, first serve basis. And during the deliberation phase, the jurors will be sequestered. The judge saying if Brian Kohlberger is convicted of murder, then they will go right into sentencing, and the jury will decide whether they want life in prison or death. Tom?
Camila Bernal for us here on Top.
So pretty interesting. And Mike, maybe you can explain to the audience why Judge Hippler wants 8 alternate jurors instead of perhaps 6, or he just added 2 more. What's your thoughts on that?
Bill, because this is a controversial case and involves so much gore, it's going to be a long trial. They're expecting 6 weeks minimum, probably. This may be and turn out to be the longest criminal case in Idaho's history. He wants to make sure that if you only have 2 alternates, then if 3 people get sick, or if 3 people can't do it, or they just freak out or whatever, and you have to remove them, you're now at the very least number that you'd have. So if you've got like 18 or 20 jurors, they're going to stay, and they could, anytime one of the original 12 has to leave for any reason, you could put in the alternate right there. They're sitting right there. They've already heard all the testimony. They'll just go in and sit with the others. And therefore, you can have this trial. It'll be a lengthy trial, and any sort of problems with the jury, with deliberations, you'll always have that alternate, like a football team. You don't want to have just 11 people on offense. You want to have 16 or 25 so that you can alternate people coming in and out. God forbid something happens to one of the starters, one of those 12. You want to be able to put somebody in their place. I think it's prudent. And in this kind of case, this is an extraordinary case. I think it's wise.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because again, for all the reasons you gave, if you just have to go, they're listening to all the same evidence. It's just the votes of 12 original jurors will count unless something occurs where one of them has to be dismissed, one of them gets sick, one of them has been prejudiced by something, and then they just go right to an alternate one. The big thing, Mike, and we discussed this all through the case when the defense was indicating a potential alternate suspect. I want to play Elizabeth Vargas here.
Attorneys have to establish reasonable doubt about their client's guilt. They don't have to actually prove who committed the crime. That's why what happened today in Brian Kohlberger's quadruple murder trial was so extraordinary. A secret document was filed by his defense team specifying someone else as the killer of 4 University of Idaho students in 2022. Now, we don't have a name yet because the document was immediately sealed by the judge in the case, Steve Hippler. Defense lawyers were given until next Friday to come up with evidence to support their theory of what they call an alternate perpetrator. Whether the jury in the case ever hears that theory or not depends on if there's any evidence produced to support it. All this was happening as Judge Hippler addressed concerns about violations of the court's gag order, with sensitive leaks about the murder investigation possibly trickling out into the media, including in an episode of Dateline. News Nation's senior national correspondent Brian Enton was in court in Boise, Idaho today. And Brian, this was likely Kohlberger's final hearing before the murder trial begins in August. And the judge is talking about appointing a special prosecutor to investigate leaks. It has.
You know, Mike, what I want to talk about here really is the alternate suspect, because it's late in the game. And perhaps the judge will just say, I'm not allowing it. You have no real evidence that there's an alternate suspect other than throwing that into the game at the last hour, and I'm disallowing it. So I'm not saying he's going to say that, but there's a potential he could say that, because what this would require, if he allows it, it would require the prosecution to fully investigate this guy. If he's going to name him by name, right? Or are they going to say, oh, we really don't know who he is? He just knows him by face. You know, are they going to play a game like that? But I can't see Judge Hippler at this late hour allowing this alternate suspect theory, because it really turns the case upside down. And minus doing a thorough investigation, there's no other way to disprove this other than to do a soup to nuts investigation on who this person is and check his car, check his alibi. Where was he when this occurred? Does he have a solid alibi? And that could throw the suspect out immediately. But the investigation nonetheless will have to be done.
Yeah, Bill, look, Ann Taylor is an excellent defense attorney. She's doing the best she can for Brian, given the case that she got handed. So therefore, a good defense attorney is going to try and offer at trial the jury an alternate theory of what may have happened. And part of that occasionally is offering up an alternate suspect to see, if they could kind of get the jury's attention away from the defendant to mistakes police made, and possibly, oh my goodness, there's somebody that was left out, that they should have looked at that person. That's the alternate killer theory. That's pretty common. However, the judge and every criminal court judge at trial has the ability to exclude that theory from the defense presenting it to the jury, because the judge is saying, look, no evidence is going to come before the jury unless there's a reliable foundation for you to offer to me for the jury to hear this. It cannot just be strange ideas that you have in your head, some sort of wannabe killer thing that your theory that you're thinking. If you're going to name somebody, you better have some sort of evidence yourself that you have gathered, your investigators have gathered, that actually has credible foundation that can, as a basis that you can go ahead and I'm going to allow you to present that to a jury. If not, the idea that, oh, there's an alternate theory out there, you will not be able to present that to a jury because you don't have anything other than a theory. If you've got a name and you have it, and they probably have a name in that document, they better have something that indicates objectively that is probably, or there's at least a reasonable expectation that that person may have committed the crime because they've done their due diligence. If you name someone as a potential killer in a case and you haven't done your due diligence, you're just throwing a name out there, that's defamation. She could be charged with defamation. So therefore, the judge being really careful, telling her, you got a theory, if you have a name, you better have a name that has a lot of information behind it, or I will not even allow you to mention alternate theory to the jury. You're not going to do that. I only want relevant evidence and reliable evidence before the jury. That's it. So she's got 7 days to put up or shut up.
This potentially could delay the trial if the judge allows it, and if it's credible, it's credible, and the prosecution has to do a full court press investigation on this, it could potentially delay the trial. But that's why I think Judge Hippler, very smartly, is having secret hearings to put this in, and he will decide in those hearings whether or not he even allows this to go forward. He could say, no, I don't find this credible. I'm not allowing you to bring this up to the court. Let's remember, Mike, that yesterday, the hearing for basically the rules going forward in this trial was 4 hours long.
Right.
There were a lot of things discussed. There were a lot of do's. There were a lot of don'ts. There was a lot of courtesy. I want you to talk to each other, but everything I want in writing. So there's no disputes. When one side raises the issue, they can pull up the document. This is the document that, they agreed to, that the defense agreed to. Ann Taylor agreed to it. Bill Thompson agreed to it. The judge doesn't want any guesses here. So everything is going to be put in writing by the prosecution and the defense, agreements that they come to prior to going to trial, which is also, look, there was a saying in the NYPD Detective Bureau, if it's not put on a complaint file report, it wasn't done.
That's right.
And there's a lot of truth to that, because you can't prove anything unless there's documentation to show it. That's why they say, did you document that? Do you have a document to back that up? Was this put in writing? That is how you memorialize things in the world of criminal justice. Mike, we're almost at that time. Your final thoughts. It was really quick.
I think that people should be really happy. No matter how you feel about this case, you should be really happy that Judge Hippler is in charge. He's a no-nonsense guy. He's making sure that the prosecution and defense abide by the rules of evidence and abide by his orders. He's a no-nonsense guy. That's the kind of judge that you want in any case, but especially in a case like this. So thumbs up to Judge Hippler. There's going to be justice for everyone. Brian Kohlberger and everyone else in this case are going to have justice.
100%. And I think it's, while we were on last night with Dr. Joni, all of these other things, these moving parts in this case, I was sort of almost wishing we could have addressed it, but we addressed it today. So folks, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button. We're Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. Great to see everyone. Have a great day, and God bless.
Thank you.
One episode just ain't enough.